you really have to be consistent with what you're
Hmm.
doing and believe in what you're doing and not get rattled when things, you hit those times that things aren't really going your way as far as your outreach and everything, because there are some slower times. And so,
Hello, welcome to the Speaking for Profit podcast, where we talk about monetizing your message and securing the bag as a public speaker and a consultant. I'm really excited about today's conversation with Mills Rodgers because he's an amazing speaker, has been doing work in education for over 15 years, and really has established himself as, I believe, an expert and a leader in our field. I'm actually in his Facebook group, and he's also always dropping some amazing gems on not just how do you monetize, but how do you really build a business that has sustainability. And one of the posts that he recently put up was like, you know what, y'all, don't let none of these coaches or nobody convince you to quit your job if you're not ready to do it. So I also consider him a leader when we think about financial independence and financial integrity with our businesses. So many times we want to just take a leap. And I think that Mills really has built an amazing foundation in his business. So if you are watching right now, live, go on and hit that like button and subscribe, because this is going to be an amazing interview. So, Mills, I just want to bring you to the front so we can get into this conversation and talk a little bit about your amazing business. Welcome to the show, fam.
oh, thank you for having me.
Definitely. So, tell me, I always like to start off these conversations with what's bringing you joy right now in your life or your business.
Okay, man, I got a lot. So,
That's good.
very thankful for my family. I got a great wife and great kids, so that's ultimately number one right there. Business has been going well. This has been my best year. I've been doing a lot of professional development for schools, and I pivoted in that direction probably about a year or so ago, and it's been the right move, and next year is looking good too. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things going good right now.
That's good. Shouts out to the fam for right helping you, keeping you grounded, and supporting your growth. I always say behind great leaders and great speakers, there's a great team. And sometimes people think that that's a virtual assistant or operations manager, but what I'm really meaning usually is our families, right? Because it really takes our families to be able to support us to be able to do this work. So you mentioned that this has been a really successful year for you. You did the pivot. What do you consider success in your business? Is it about like the money you've been able to get? Is it about the balance? Tell me a little bit about what that looks like for you.
I think it's all of the above. It's definitely money. Money is what
Mm.
we needed to survive. We needed to thrive. And so, yeah, money has been getting better, and the message, feeling like, my message is very relevant to the audiences that I'm speaking to. And just the continued growth, because it's like the more I speak, the deeper I get into it, the more I learn about the content, believe it or not. Because that's one thing about speaking, is that we all have room to grow. And,
Yeah.
we want to be subject matter experts. And that takes us doing research and listening to people and learning their different perspectives. And so all of that stuff has really, really helped me grow. And I just feel like I'm just so far, so much further than what I was last year at this time.
I love that. I love that you mentioned that skill set, right? Because I think some people see speakers like yourself or myself or even like an amazing Eric Thomas or even Oprah, right? Because Oprah's one of my favorite speakers, to be honest, and interviewers in particular. I love her. And they're just like, they think people just woke up like that. And I'm like, you know what? It becomes practice, really being involved with your audience and doing some things over and over again. So for you, when you decided to do this pivot, what were you doing before? And then tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
I was speaking more so to colleges, doing like leadership, personal development to college students. I was doing working a lot with Upward Bound and Student Support Services program, doing some leadership conferences. And it's kind of, my career has been a little all over the place, I'll be honest, because when I first got into speaking, I was wanting to do professional development because, yeah, I'd been a teacher and it was just a natural way to go. But then, of course, I'm looking at some of the people you mentioned, like Eric Thomas and even Oprah, but, more of the motivational type people. And I'm like, I want to do that. And so I kind of pivoted early on to that, So I was like, okay, let me find some lanes that I can do those types of talks. And I did.
Mhm.
But then it was kind of
Mm.
like, you know what, I think I want to pivot back to doing professional development, education. I think there's a little bit more money in it, at least from the education perspective in the education market. And so that was one thing, but then also I had a lot of expertise in it. I taught 15 years. My mom was an educator, so it's kind of like a
Oh,
family
shouts
profession.
out.
So
Okay.
oh
Okay,
yeah,
that's
she was
really
the first in
cool.
the family. Yeah, first in the family to go to college in Jim Crow era Louisiana. And
Wow.
yeah,
What
so
school did she
yes,
go to?
she went to Grambling. She
Okay,
was
that's what's up. I went to
yeah,
Dillard, so shouts out to all of, the HBCU folks. That's really cool.
yeah,
That's really
definitely.
exciting.
Black woman, first in the
Mm.
family to go to college. So, that's something I tell people, like she did
Mhm.
this in the Jim Crow era as a black woman. So,
Right, right, right,
like,
which
hey,
was not easy.
we got to get out our own way. If she did it,
Mhm.
then you need to get out your own way. So,
Exactly. I really
mhm,
appreciate that you're mentioning, right, finding alignment in your business because I think that when we first get started, right, we only see the people that are doing it really well. And a lot of times, not even doing it well, but that are more, how do I put it, visual, right? That you might see on YouTube and stuff like that. And those are going to be the motivational speakers. But there's a lane of various niches and industries where you don't often see people. I even have some clients who do some amazing work, but they have NDAs. They can't even really share who they work with, right? Like, so it gets really
mhm.
interesting when you start getting into corporate and education. But what I find, Mills, and I want to know what you think about this, a lot of folks think that there's no money in education. And I often have to push people to realize that there is a bag there. So for you, it seems like you're doing a professional development. Are you speaking primarily to administrators or to students? And what do you say to the folks who say, like, there's no bag, in education?
Well, well, yeah, I'm speaking primarily, well, exclusively, really, to administrators, teachers, paraprofessionals.
Mm,
And so I guess, as far as the bag and speaking, it's relative. It
yeah.
depends on what you want, but I mean honestly, yeah, education may not be, you probably in all honesty, and I may be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not going to make the same amount as you might make speaking to a corporate audience.
Yep.
However, I feel like the money is good. Let's not be crazy now. So I'm like, when look, the first time I spoke, and you might laugh about this. I mean, I think it's so crazy now, but the first time I got paid to speak, I did 4 hours of professional development. This was in 2017 at an elementary school in Dallas for $1,200. And I'm
Mm,
like, I look at that now. I'm like, man, that's crazy.
yeah.
But at the time, that was like about 2 weeks of work as a
Yep.
teacher. Week and a half, 2 weeks of work. And so, yeah, that's really, as far as speaking, that's nothing, twelve hundred
Hmm.
dollars. And so, yeah, you can easily make $1,200 uh like that as a speaker.
Yep.
That's really literally, could be 10 minutes of work, if you had to break it down by time or something like that.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think that, yeah, that bag is relative, but I mean, heck, I mean, I think the money that you can make as a speaker in the education market, I mean, we all know people that speak at colleges, that do
Yep.
PD, that are doing really, really well. They're really kicking butt, they're financially sound. And so, yeah, the bag is there.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, if you're looking to make 25,000 for a keynote, 30,000 for a keynote. Come on. I
Yep,
mean,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
E
but
No, it's
it's there.
normally not gonna happen unless you are considered a celebrity for that space. That's what I tell folks, right? For a keynote,
Yeah.
right? That's when they're bringing in the Les Browns and the Eric
Hmm.
Thomases, and the be even Beyonce gonna charge you 1,000,000, right? The people that have more of a celebrity to bring people in. I have like over about 10 years experience in higher education. So I was doing primarily like multicultural, LGBT center type of work, and
Hmm.
we would bring in speakers, but it would have to be something that the students were really centered on, right? Like, so if the students got a hold of your book or a hold of your YouTube channel and they really loved it, then you might get that 20 to 30,000, but it's not really coming from that department budget. It's coming from those
Yeah.
student fees, right? And they have way more push and way more agency on campus. So I find it's always interesting to hear people say that they can't find things in education, because I think people want to focus on the student side. And I do think that sometimes, right, the bag might not be as big, but I think it's big on relationships. So for you, if you could share, with folks, what are maybe like two strategies that you use to find paid opportunities right now?
Right now, it's just knowing the decision makers, and
Mhm.
so right before we got on, I was sending out some emails to decision makers because
Yes.
I know which ones are typically looking for presenters, whether it be for convocations at the beginning of the school year for their staff or for professional development throughout the school year. And
Yeah.
so it's just a matter of sending out, an email to them. I'm putting a video in the email for them to, get a little taste of who I am, what I do, and everything. And, it works. Now, it's not the most sexy work. And I think, in my experience, that's what a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to send out emails. I don't want to
Mhm.
do this. Well, then I guess you just don't want, I mean, you just don't want it
You don't
bad
want the
enough.
bag. You don't want the
Yeah, you don't
bag.
want the bag. The bag ain't, look, we all want people to come up to us. I call it walk up business. We all
Mhm.
want that. We want people to refer us. But shoot, you gotta have something to refer. People
Yeah.
gotta have they have to have seen you in order to refer you.
Yep.
And I'm starting to get that more. I'm
Yeah.
doing a series of conferences right now uh for the Department of Health and Human Services here in Texas, and
Mhm.
that was a referral. And
Mm.
so yeah, once you kind of get in front of people, yeah, people can start referring you. But that's where a lot of speakers, I think, new to the game, they miss out because they're not doing anything, and so how people gonna refer you if you're not doing anything? So
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly, right? And I always call it, right, the work that we don't want to do, but that we have to do if we really want to grow our business. And I find it in speaking, but even if you don't want to be a speaker and you have a product, more people
yeah,
have to know about your business, and you have to grow your own audience until you have some money to hire someone else to support you to do it. But I love that you're doing the cold, but also warm emailing, because I find that probably because of the work that you've already done, people know your name, they've seen you, or they at least resonate with you. And I know I was reading a book recently, and it was saying it takes sometimes people to see your name and business 3 to 7 times before they
hmm,
actually are like, hey, I want to respond to this person. So I think that that's a great tip. And not just the tip of the emailing, but being willing to do some of the work that you don't want to do to get the outcomes that you want, right? And getting comfortable with that. So I know for me, Mills, what I don't normally do is when I'm getting into what I call is getting into my bag, I put on some music. I kind of prepare for the moment to be sending out emails, because I find it's energetic. If I'm sitting up there grudging it and hating it and not wanting to do it, then I'm probably not gonna get no love. But if I'm in there listening to some Luther or listening to some good music and some jams, things that
hmm.
make me feel abundant, normally I get that traction. So for you, how do you prepare yourself to kind of do the work that's not as sexy? And what are your like working hours? Are you sending emails every day? Are you doing it every couple of days? Like, what's your process?
Well, I guess as far as the motivation and that sort of thing, it's just the excitement of knowing that, hey, this does work. And, I've gotten the opportunities and, I've seen myself grow. So, success just builds upon success. You have that formula and it's just like, okay, let's do this. As for now, what was the second part of your question?
I was just asking how often do you send out
Oh,
emails?
yeah.
Because I know,
Yeah,
like,
how
that's
often?
usually the question
Mhm,
for folks because 'cause they're like, "I sent out emails and it didn't work." These are the clients that I sometimes work with, and I'm like, "Well, did you send a follow-up email?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "When's the last time you sent emails?" "It's been about a month." And I'm
mhm.
like, "That's just not enough." So I'm wondering for you, how often are you in that type of space in your business?
Oh, I mean, I'm doing outreach pretty much, 5 days a week. And so, yeah, I'm
Mhm.
waking up in the morning and, go work out and then come back and, do my outreach.
Yeah.
That's emailing and, just targeting certain, maybe associations or
Yep. Conferences, yeah.
regions. Yeah,
Mhm.
conferences. And yeah, so it's just, and then, looking back, and then yeah, you have a what's the word I'm looking for? A cadence, email
Yeah.
cadence, basically.
Yep.
And so yeah, I'm like, okay, well, it's been about a week. Let me follow up with them. Because
Mhm.
here's the thing, a lot of times people are wanting that instant response. That's what I found with a lot of speakers. And it's like, look, dude, when you go to your phone and look at your emails, you probably got like, 20,000 that you haven't
Yep.
looked at. And so that's the same thing with these people. And I mean, you've worked in education, I've worked in education. We all know you get slammed with emails
Yep.
all day, every day. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, people get sidetracked. And so, you can't take it personal that somebody's not answering you. They may
Yeah.
be very interested. It could be just the timing. It could be maybe they're looking for another job. Who
Mhm.
knows? You just got to keep putting your information out there.
Exactly, and keep growing and keep growing. Attention public speakers, coaches, and consultants. Ever dreamt of booking five-figure speaking and consulting contracts? In just 5 days, I'm teaching my tried and tested system to elevate your speaking and consulting business. Forget the cold emails, bypass the salesy pitches. This challenge is about building genuine high value connections. And here's a promise I have for you. With a commitment of just 1 to 2 hours a day for 5 days, you're going to witness transformative results. On day one, you'll learn how to craft a business strategy without cold emails or paying to speak. Day two is all about you redefining your profile to attract decision makers ready to invest in your expertise. By day three, you'll have your very own five-figure sales system to turn contacts into clients. By day four, we will have you automating your funnel with proven templates and scripts. And day five, I'm going to teach you how to master the art of discovery calls with a step by step checklist and exclusive five-figure sales secrets. Whether you're just stepping onto the speaking scene or you're a seasoned pro, this challenge is tailor made for you. I'm going to teach you the exact strategies that have helped me help my clients make over $2 million in the last 2 years. The journey to a thriving five-figure speaking and consulting business begins with this challenge. So, are you ready to redefine your limits, accelerate your growth, and bask in the limelight of your success? I want you to join the 5 days to five figure speaking challenge now. Let's rewrite your success story together. Simply head over to speakingforprofit.com. You're going to click that button that says 5 days to five figure speaking gigs so you can get started with the challenge. Can't wait to see you there. All right, now back to the show. So, for you, what are you looking forward to in 2024 as a speaker? Are there any like key events that you really want to speak at, or are you just kind of trying to keep it consistent? What are some of your goals as we move into the new year?
Oh, great question. I'm looking to do more conferences, and so that has been a big push of mine the past month or two. I saw like a lot of places did conferences in October. They were just like seemed like every day. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have
Yep.
known,
Yep.
but then it's like, hey, you know what? Next October. So I'm sending stuff out to them and like, hey, I want to be a keynote for your conference in next October or next November. And so yeah, that's been a major push of mine is doing conferences for different education associations. I'm pretty excited about that because, there's a whole bunch of conferences out there that need keynotes and
Exactly.
so I did do the one in out your way in California this
Mhm.
past summer and I'd like to do that one again. It
Mhm.
was really fun, and so yeah, those are some of the things I'm looking at. I've already got picked up for a couple of conferences already,
That's
but I'm
good.
definitely looking for some more. I'm hungry.
Yeah. Yes. I love conferences, Mills, because I
Mhm.
find that Number one, it's a great space to build relationships. But number two, there's always decision makers in the building. So, I think I've seen you post this. You use the tool Talkadot, right? When you go out and speak. And we had actually Arel Moody came to Speaking for Profit and did a great training for some of my clients. But I think what's so promising about conferences is it's something that could be reoccurring. If you do really well, people will bring you back again and again. So I love that you're focusing on that, and I think it's going to be a
Mhm.
really fruitful year. This year there was a lot of events, but I think next year what I'm seeing as I've been doing my research, it's almost doubled. And I think, the more we
Oh, wow.
move away from the pandemic, away from it because people are still getting COVID, so that's why I say away. More people are feeling more comfortable, getting outside and really supporting some of those events. So one thing that I've been doing is looking locally. I'm actually now in Atlanta. I moved from California. So I'm
Oh,
looking at
okay.
like what events are happening locally, because that means I just got to drive, right? Like that's pretty easy. And then if those events have national events, I'm like, "Oh, wow, like if you have a local event, then me building relationships with you, maybe I can get to the national event and support that." So I think that's going to be really really cool for the new year. So let's just pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about strengthening your skill as a speaker. What do you have a pre-talk ritual that prepares you for the stage? Are there other things? Do you practice a lot? How do you become a better speaker over time?
I like to write out my talks, even though I don't memorize them or anything, but
Mhm.
usually going into a talk, whether it be a week or so or even a few days, I'll just kind of write out what my main points are and everything just to, I don't know, it just helps me to internalize whatever, I'm talking about.
Mhm.
But, I'm very much one that's conversational in my
Yes.
talks. I'm not the orator or anything, and so I just like it real laid back, and I want people to feel comfortable. I do like using technology to get feedback from people during talks. There's this one app that I really love using. It's Slido. I'm sure you've heard of it,
Mm,
and
mhm.
so people can, they can chime in using their phone because sometimes you get people that are shy, they don't want to talk in front of a group, and
Yep.
so it's just a great tool to use to have that interaction because my style is really based on interaction, and that's one thing I had to learn early on as a speaker, because especially speaking at colleges, because the attendance can be so, I don't know, it's such the roll of the dice,
Yep.
and it's voluntary, it's not mandatory. So I travel to a campus, and you have a few students show up, and I'm like, oh, I had this great activity, and so I had to learn like different methods I could use to get, to not have to depend on numbers for an activity.
Mm.
And so yeah, it's like using different tools, and so that's something that I've gotten better at, practicing with stuff like that, and integrating that into my presentations. As far as day of, I'd like to get to the place early, at least an hour or so beforehand, because you just never know what the technology is going to look like. You want to feel the building,
Yep.
feel the, just kind of immerse yourself in that environment, in that atmosphere. And so um I do like to get a few minutes to myself if
Yeah.
possible. And sometimes it's just weird because sometimes people are just like, they just want to talk to you the whole time, and then there's some that'll definitely give you your space. So I don't know,
Mhm.
that's something I got to figure out, like as far as that part of the process. um
Mhm.
to where I don't want to come off like I'm being stuffy or anything like that, but at the same
Exactly.
time I do appreciate having a few minutes to myself.
Yeah. I'm always the one, Mills, to put it out there. I guess I'm a little bit blunt. I'm just like, you know what? I just need about 5 minutes. Cause you do sometimes have those event organizers. And I think it's just because they're anxious. Have you ever got that energy? And they're kind of like,
Hmm.
they just want to make sure everything is okay with you. So they're almost walking around behind you like your dog or your cat, right? Like just very close to you. Do you need anything? Here's your space. So, I usually just
Hmm.
say, can I have a few moments to myself? But I totally understand that they just want to make sure that you're taken care of, and that's usually what it's
Right.
all about. So I love that you mentioned coming in early, because I believe in Murphy's Law. My mom used to always talk to me about that. There's always something that can happen. And I like building a relationship with the sound people anyways, because if the mic or something does go out, I want to know who I need to be looking at and talking to, just in case I
Hmm.
need some support. So thank you so much for those tips. Now, negotiation for you. Are you a proposal writer when, it comes, like, let's say you have a call with a decision maker, discovery call goes well, you send in a proposal. Do you have like a standard rate sheet? Is that something that you suggest for speakers, or do you kind of customize every time? Tell me a little bit about that process for you.
Oh, great question. I have a rate sheet. It's something I've instituted. I instituted it about a year or so ago,
Mhm.
and I really like it because it's on paper, and it just eliminates a lot of discussion. Because I mean, in all honesty, we know that people tend to. We all tend. I ain't gonna say we all, but a lot of us tend to feel very uncomfortable talking about money,
Yep.
and so having a rate sheet takes the discussion out, because it's like, hey, here it is.
Mhm.
And on my rate sheet, I do say it's negotiable because, budgets vary. But yeah, I mean, I really like having the rate sheet. I do proposals when I need to, when they ask for one. A lot of conferences, especially if you're a keynote, or a featured presenter, they will ask for it. But if they're not asking for it, then I tend not to do a formal proposal.
I love that. I love that. Make it more easeful for yourself, right? Which is what we trying to
Hmm.
call in easeful abundance. I don't want to do a whole lot of labor if I don't have to do it. So when it comes to your speaking business, is it primarily you, or do you have a team that supports you right now?
I have a VA. I
Hmm.
hired a VA this year to help me out with finding leads and everything. And so, yeah, I'm moving in that direction.
That's good. I love that. Like, I feel like that's the one thing that a lot of speakers could utilize, right? Especially once you get to going, because when you get busy, it's really hard to do the outreach or to keep the leads list, or even to do the follow up, which I think is so important, right? Like, after you speak, being able to send that thank you email, or being able
Hmm.
to follow up about testimonial, or if there's another opportunity to work with the organization. So I really do love that you got a VA, and I'm sure that there's some other folks that maybe you'll hire as you continue to grow your business. So for you, you're doing this full time, correct? Or is it more
Yes.
like okay, definitely. How
Hmm.
long did it take you to transition into full time?
It was pretty short. I started
Mhm.
speaking in 2017, and then I decided to go full time in the summer of 2019. I bet on myself. However,
Mm.
I would tell people to tread lightly with that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you saw my post in my group,
Mm.
and
Yep.
so I'm not going to lead people astray. I'm not going to say
Yep.
I did this and you need to do it too. But no, I'm not like that. Because it does have its ups and downs, and you really have to be consistent with what you're
Mhm.
doing and believe in what you're doing and not get rattled when things, you hit those times that things aren't really going your way as far as your outreach and everything, because there are some slower times. And so but yeah, I went full time in 2019, and then the pandemic hit, and it didn't really slow me down though. I actually got more business during the
I keep
pandemic.
telling people that and they don't believe me. And I'm like, that was
Yeah.
my money time. I loved it.
Yeah,
And
because
most of it was from home, right?
yeah, exactly. Because yeah, I was doing virtual engagements, and that's when I was really targeting colleges. And so, especially those trio programs, they couldn't
Mhm.
do anything else.
Yep.
And so they had me coming in virtually presenting, because they couldn't do the trips that they used to do and all the other stuff. And so yeah, I stayed pretty busy, 2020 and 2021 virtually.
Mhm. That's really cool. Well, I want to just congratulate you, because I think that that's a a big and brave move for a speaker to go full time. And I know it wasn't easy as someone who's doing this full time. It's like, you have those ups and downs, but I think consistency, like you said, having a larger mission can really impact that, and having a vision for yourself is going to be something that's really powerful. So before you go, because I know we're about to wrap up, one of my students came up with these amazing cards. They're called the social experience conversation cards. And I'm going to pull a card and I'm just going to ask you one of the questions that comes up from here. So this might be something, Mills, that you could use eventually, as an activity with one of your speaking opportunities. But I promised my client that I would utilize this at my next interview. So I'm just going to pull a lucky card and see what we get. Okay. We already kind of did something similar to that, so we'll do this one. What would a perfect day look like for you?
Oh, okay. A perfect day. Man, well, they're already going pretty good. So, having, breakfast with my wife and everything, and, uh, just starting the day off with, the family on, just feeling good and everybody doing what they want to do. And, I guess working. Well, no, I wouldn't even say working. I guess a perfect day for me would be actually a speaking engagement. Doing a speaking engagement on a Monday morning. I really like doing speaking engagements on Monday mornings. So yeah, it would have to be a
Yes.
Monday. Uh, and all the other stuff will be part of it, happy family and everything. Going to the speaking engagement, killing it, coming back, looking in my inbox and seeing a couple of emails with calls booked for
Yes.
for other engagements, and I guess 100% on Talkadot. Real good comments on Talkadot, and then going out for after talk dinner.
Mm, I love
So
that.
I think that would be those would be components of my perfect day.
I love that. Family, securing the bag, all of your work from your lead management, working out, and then sitting down to eat a good meal. That sounds like a perfect
Mhm.
day to me. That sounds like a
Yeah.
beautiful. And I love that you mentioned a Monday, right? Because I definitely prefer anything besides a Friday. I'm like, don't ask me to do the thing on Friday. I want that longer weekend. So if I could get that day. So shouts out to Rakita Franklin for these amazing conversation cards. I'm gonna definitely continue to use them in the interview. And I really appreciate you being the first one, Mills, to kind of like utilize it and learn from it. And I'll send you the link after this if you want to check them out. Attention public speakers, coaches, and consultants. Ever dreamt of booking 5-figure speaking and consulting contracts? In just 5 days, I'm teaching my tried and tested system to elevate your speaking and consulting business. Forget the cold emails, bypass the salesy pitches. This challenge is about building genuine high value connections. And here's a promise I have for you. With a commitment of just 1 to 2 hours a day for 5 days, you're going to witness transformative results. On day 1, you'll learn how to craft a business strategy without cold emails or paying to speak. Day 2 is all about you redefining your profile to attract decision makers ready to invest in your expertise. By day 3, you'll have your very own 5-figure sales system to turn contacts into clients. By day 4, we will have you automating your funnel with proven templates and scripts. And day 5, I'm going to teach you how to master the art of discovery calls with a step-by-step checklist and exclusive 5-figure sales secrets. Whether you're just stepping onto the speaking scene or you're a seasoned pro, this challenge is tailor-made for you. I'm going to teach you the exact strategies that have helped me help my clients make over $2 million in the last 2 years. The journey to a thriving 5-figure speaking and consulting business begins with this challenge. So are you ready to redefine your limits, accelerate your growth, and bask in the limelight of your success? I want you to join the 5 days to 5-figure speaking challenge now. Let's rewrite your success story together. Simply head over to speakingforprofit.com. You're going to click that button that says 5 days to 5-figure speaking gigs so you can get started with the challenge. Can't wait to see you there. All right, Now back to the show. So,
Yeah,
anything
definitely.
else that you want the audience to know about you, your business, and ways that maybe that they can support you?
Well, I do offer some coaching. I'm going to be putting out another coaching offer real soon.
Okay.
However, I would really welcome people joining my group, speaking your speaking business into existence. I feel like it's a very down to earth,
It is.
relatable group, compared to some other ones I've seen on Facebook. I feel
Mhm.
like people don't really come off as pompous or full of
Mhm.
themselves. And so, yeah, we love for you all, if you're listening, to join if you have an interest in speaking. Also, visit my website, successisaprocess.net. And I would just say, just stay consistent. If you believe in your ability to speak, you will have to do some outreach. We all want inbound business. However, to really get known, you're going to have to do some outbound. And it's not the sexiest work, but it does work. It does work. And so, uh, that would be my 2 cents worth.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you so much for being here on the Speaking for Profit podcast. It's always cool to have conversation with speakers that have experience and to double down on some of the things that folks really need to do to monetize their message. I always tell my clients and other speakers that we have a powerhouse. We have actually a superhero skill by being speakers. There are so many folks who are afraid to do what we do every day. Right. So, really like stepping into it with honor and with grace. And like you said, committing is, I think, the thing that could really push people forward. So, y'all, thank you so much for listening to this amazing episode. We will put all of the information in the show notes so that you can hang out with Mr. Rodgers when you want to, and so that you can join this amazing group because I've had a great time being a part of it. So thank you so much for being here. And until next time, peace.